Joining us on the Movies and Stuff show to talk about the cult horror comedy film The Frighteners, actor Peter Dobson.
Well, that certainly was a good one, buddy. I think you sent me an email saying that was one of Jeffrey's favorite films to work on, as well as mine. No doubt about it. Because it was shot all in New Zealand. Peter, even in those days, just prior to the Frighteners, he did a slew of those kind of like underground movies. Yeah. I'm forgetting the names, like The Basket Case, I think, was one of them, and then he kind of got a little commercial success with Heavenly Creatures. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the studios came in, and I think Robert Zemeckis took a real liking to him, and they made what was supposed to be their first big commercial film. When that movie, it was designed to come out originally on Halloween, and they at the last kind of minute they decided to make it a summer release opposite Independence Day, and it got killed. At the box office, and then of course, Peter Jackson went on to make all the Lord of the Rings, and then all that stuff, and then people rediscovered the Frighteners on DVD and so forth, and then the movie. That's how it got, the cult following that it has now. They play it like every year, and it's seeing Michael J. Fox in that, it always reminded, everyone I was working with him, I couldn't get Back to the Future out of my mind, because the character I kind of played was like Biff. Right.
Totally.
So it was that, and during the course of the filming, Michael would always call John from the Addams Family, who played the sheriff with the decaying dog. He was always calling him Doc. Yeah. Like all through because it was just such similarities between the stories with the characters. And they were breaking out these effects back in '95 when we shot it that were way ahead of its time. People don't know if it started off as kind of like a kind of zany comedy, and then it got incredibly violent like halfway through, and then people were like, "Wait, that's Peter Jackson." Yeah,
totally. No, absolutely. Yeah, I was lucky enough. I got to see this movie in theaters, and I loved it. I was one of the few people that didn't go see Independence Day in theaters. I saw this instead.
Oh, really? Yeah, I mean, exactly, man. I mean, it just got buried. It just got buried when it came out, and no one knew who, Peter Jackson was. But the few people who saw it and got it, they were like, who is this guy from New Zealand? Because I mean, there have been horror comedies before, like Fright Night, and with kind of like with tongue in cheek, but there was an intensity to the Frighteners as well, where it was definitely tongue in cheek, but then it got incredibly intense. And then it kind of got funny again, and then it would go back to being really intense, and it was really like taking this amazing, roller coaster ride, and it just showed what was to come from this very young guy named Peter Jackson. This genius was on his way, and I think for all of us that were there, it was pretty much everybody's first time in New Zealand. So when you had time off, you just went and experienced this place that was very prehistoric. That's why, everything you see in Lord of the Rings is, the landscape is all in New Zealand. It's very much, it's like a different planet down there. It really was. It's incredible. Yeah.
So you pointed out that, like Peter Jackson was just beginning his rise. So, I mean, you're getting on a plane and you're going to New Zealand with a director that's untested with this kind of budget? What's going through your head?
Well, basically, it was, I was working, I did a very short-lived show with Robert Zemeckis. We had a show called Johnny Bago, and it was like 12, maybe 13 episodes, and Bob kind of kept me in the roster of his future projects. He did Forrest Gump, and the only reason I got that role is because in one of the episodes that we shot from his TV show, I did an Elvis parody in it. And so he asked me to do that character, to do the Elvis character in Forrest Gump. And then later on, he did Tales from, Bob was an executive producer on Tales from the Crypt, and did that stuff. And then the Frighteners came up, and he suggested to Peter that I come in and do this, that character. So I met Peter in L.A. For the initial couple of auditions that I did, and then after getting it, it was something that I started watching his stuff. I'm forgetting with the names, but it was like Basket Case. He had these low budget, pretty much the style of Frighteners. Very funny, very gory. Very intense, but with no budgets, and he already he was very popular in New Zealand and throughout Europe. People knew who he was. It's not like he shot out of nowhere. He had that cult following, kind of like Robert Rodriguez did before, with El Mariachi. So he had this really big cult following. Zemeckis took an enormous liking to him, and got Universal to back this thing up. So it was an exciting process to work with this, director after seeing these slew of films, what he was going to do with a budget. And in those days, I think, it wasn't a huge budget. It was, I think, like 25, maybe 30 million, somewhere in there. By today's standards, it was really nothing. It was intense. He was just a very hands-on director, but at the same time, it was like working, and I'm sure Jeff Combs would say the same thing, like working with a 15-year-old boy. It was like just hanging out with a 15-year-old boy. He had that mentality, And
it really is amazing. Because some of the movies he did Bad Taste. That was
Bad Taste. That's the one.
That was one. And he did that for like $200,000, and then he did Dead Alive after that, like shortly after that, and that was like a $3 million budget. So he really skyrocketed on that, and then he gets $30 million to do the Frighteners.
That's correct.
So
that's exactly correct. Bad Taste. I don't know why I was calling it bad, but those are the two movies that I was referring to, by the way. Yes. Yeah, so and then he gets a studio backing into and not only that, he got to shoot the movie in his home country.
That's amazing. Yeah, he pulled that off.
The respect level was already kind of set there. They knew that Peter was something unique and something special. He had obviously his on-set facility there called Wingnut Films, a big production warehouse that they did all the special effects, and which he uses to this day. Everything was on hand, and and ironically, a lot of the landscaping that they chose did look like Northern California. So, aside from the American cast, all the local players were all New Zealand who spoke perfect American accents.
That's very cool. And now, of course, you mentioned your character Ray was kind of the Biff type guy, a bit of a health nut, a hothead. Did you know anybody like that? Did you base this off of anybody in particular?
Well, obviously, again, I went back and watched Back to the Future. There was definitely similarities, and after reading the script, even I saw the similarities between. When I read the script, that there were similarities between that and Back to the Future in terms of the characters. Again, John, can you help me with his name, please? John, you guys are you guys are the movie buffs from the Addams, from the Addams family. Do you remember the Addams family from
John
Thank
Astin.
you,
Yeah.
John Astin.
Yes.
Who played that character was kind of like who was kind of a mentor to Michael J. Fox and the Frighteners, and then this very bullying guy named Ray, there was just these similarities, but then to take it a step further, I knew this was a kind of an offbeat comedy, and when I was there, rugby is a huge sport in New Zealand. It's like their version of football is rugby. Incredibly, it makes American football looks like sissy ball out there. but the way they dress, they wear these striped socks and striped shirts. And I said, Peter, I don't know if this is going to make sense or not, but can I have the character dressed like how the guys dress out here? And he loved the idea. He goes, it'll kind of be an inside joke. So that's why I wore these silly striped shirts and these big orange and black striped socks for a guy who just works at his house. And just incredibly cartoonish. We talked about it, what was kind of the way to really, obviously the only way to go with that character, kind of a more over the top that this guy got, because he's one of the first to die, and who's in total denial about it, and having the meetings with his wife in the afterlife, thinking that the relationship could still work out, and then she finds out that she kind of thought he was a buffoon to begin with, and that he was taking the money and doing all these crazy things with it. So there was definitely an approach to take on the film that, Peter just said, really almost go for the old Tex Avery cartoon approach on this guy, which was a great note, by the way.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I mean, right down to the excuse my language, but right down to the fucking exercises where, buddy, if you notice the exercises, they were from like the old, the old Jack LaLanne
yes.
the old Jack LaLanne exercises by putting his hand on and doing the knee bends. The old row machine even the row machine that they used on set was from like 1983. So there was all these hidden jokes. I mean, my character really wasn't in shape at all, I was just some scrawny kid, and it just all kind of, we just put the puzzles together because I wasn't ripped, and he goes, it's okay. Look at how you exercise, So all these kind of hidden jokes were thrown into it, and of course, there was a part in the film which was not in the original film. It was used later in the director's cut, where in their warehouse they had all these props, and I saw an Elvis statue, and I said, Peter, wouldn't it be funny if you could throw that in a room and float it around, and I could say, he's alive, he's alive. And he grabbed it, threw it right. He just said, "Go get that Elvis statue," and then they got the green screen. In those days, it was still green screen, and they threw it in as kind of a tip in the hat to the Forrest Gump thing that I did with Zemeckis. So again, it was all these kind of hidden jokes throughout. And Arlie Remy literally reprising his role from Full Metal Jacket.
Right.
I mean, that was right out of Full Metal Jacket. So it was. It was just filled with all these wonderful, innuendos throughout the film.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you guys were shooting. You were shooting on green screen, and this was pretty early in the process of doing stuff like this. Fully compositing shots like that. Was it a huge pain in the ass for you guys to get your head around it?
Well, I think for Michael, who was very familiar with the process, because Bob was doing that process right from 1981 or 82. With the original Back to the Future, there was it was being used. It was still a new format. But Peter, even in those days, had pioneered ideas where, opposed to me just looking at a piece of tape, he had monitors of Michael J. Fox that he would set up with playback, so I would actually really be looking at Michael. It was very barbaric, but in those days people weren't even looking at anything. They would look, you'd be looking literally at a piece of tape, and your eye line would really, by the time the finished product would come out, the eye line would never really match. The effect would really separate itself from the reality of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Peter wanted to get as much, believe it, the eye line was the most important thing to him. So when he added for example, the Ray Lynskey character sitting at the dining room table, that he was very much part of that conversation, and looking at both actors. So he was meticulous in the setups when I did it in this giant room with green screens, but yet had the real actors on monitors and looking at them. They weren't just doing off camera; they were on monitors, and they would set up a certain way because Trini would do something that she said, "Oh, I don't, we didn't." They actually didn't do their scene yet, but Michael and Trini said, "We'll do it as close to we'll do this scene for real." So the three of us did it for real together. We played the scene because we knew I was going to be in it. Ultimately, it was going to be a separate shot, but we rehearsed the shit out of it. So by the time that I did the green screen effect and then adding the monitors to feel very much part of that scene, I think really led to the credibility and the care that Peter put in to make it as realistic as possible. Yeah. And his green screen effects were, they were doing it since the late 70s in Star Wars. I mean, it was pretty much the same thing. Peter was New Zealand's version of George Lucas, man. He really was. He really understood the format of green screen and this new technology that was actually breaking out, that people are even using now. Went from green screen to blue screen to now it's digital. Yeah. Now everything is digital. He really was a pioneer on how this thing was going to be done, and his vision of it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about the plot real quick, just out of curiosity. When Frank dies and goes to heaven, everyone's standing around but Ray. Mm-hmm. Where did Ray end up?
It's a great question, pal. You mean when he goes through the tunnel?
Yeah. When Frank gets up to heaven, everybody's there, but Ray's missing. I just kind of want to know, in your mind, where did Ray end up?
I'll think of a different scene. Yeah, no. Good question, buddy. That's a good question. Probably because I wasn't there physically. I had breaks in between. I was most likely. I had 2 weeks off while making that, and they said you might as well take advantage. Fiji's very close by, and I know I'd never be in the South Pacific again, most likely. So with the production's blessing, they allowed me to take a 2-week break. Otherwise, and just basically, I already saw New Zealand at that point, and then went off to Fiji for about 10 days. And I think during that process is when they shot that actual scene.
Well, what a brutal shoot!
So yeah,
I noticed that too. The way you could justify it, that Ray was such a bad guy that maybe he wound up in hell.
He may have wound up in hell, but you actually ended up in heaven because you got to go to Fiji. So
right, exactly.
Now, do you have a favorite scene in particular? One that you just either that you were in that you just love, or just in general in the movie that you just think is your favorite?
I do. My favorite scene is when Ray's alive, and it's the scene in the kitchen when Michael's using that toaster-like device, and I know he's scamming me, and he's coming off very angry. And then there's a thing in there. Again, I saw a prop laying around, and I asked Peter, the water pistol led to one thing. So Michael said, no, you know what? Let me use the water pistol. I'll use that and say there's holy water in it. And then the water pistol became a gag. And then I said, Michael, and then when I throw you out, I'll take the water pistol and start hitting you with it. Like a little boy, and then as I'm escorting him out of the house, I have the water pistol in my hand and get all your shit and get out of here, and chase him off with the water pistol. And that was all thought of on the day. And it was just one of those periodic things. And the few times that I see the movie, I'm literally on the floor with it when Michael's spraying the kitchen in the refrigerator, and then I grab it and turn it on him. That's, he stands out to me.
It's so awesome. And, you mentioned it before, and it definitely is the case that this has such a great cult following. And I don't think it's necessarily just because it's Peter Jackson, and Peter Jackson went on to do Lord of the Rings and King Kong and all that. I think the movie itself, all that aside, would have just ended up being a cult classic anyway. Do you get a kick out of that people still talk about it and still love it after all this time?
Well, it's if anything, it's the movie that I even get recognized for. I mean, I took a road trip over the 4th of July weekend, and I went out to Montana. I went to Little Bighorn, and just about every little hotel or nook and cranny I went there, people were noticing me from the Frighteners, and they're like, "Hey, you're that crazy guy," or "You're that I know that," or "I know your voice," And they go, "Well, did I go to high school with you?" And I'm like, "I don't think so." And they're like, "No, there's something familiar." This was at the Little Bighorn thing when and some of these people were American Indian as well, and they go, "Were you in a movie? Like, was it the Frighteners?" And I would say, "Yeah." And they go, I knew that voice sounded familiar. Oh my God, and it even amazes me to this day. And now you can consider it, how fast time flies. But my God, that movie was, almost, I don't know, 25 years ago. What's it, 20? It was 90. It came out in 96, right?
96, yeah.
95, yeah. 96. So yeah, we're getting in 2016. So we're looking at 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm shocked at that movie. Well, no, that's the wrong word. I'm amazed that film really took off the way it did. I mean, when it bombed, everybody just said, "Well, that was a nice try." Who knew? And then, like you said, Peter Jackson, or people who didn't know Peter Jackson, they just started playing it on TV. And well, in those days, the big thing, where people actually first discovered it was was on Laserdisc.
Right.
When Laserdisc was really big, that's where it got its first really big push, and it caught on like wildfire, was through Laserdisc. Then they started playing it on TV. And it turned into like what they do with the Peanuts thing, with the pumpkin, the Ray Pumpkin from Charlie Brown. And now it's a Halloween thing every year. You'll see it on the Sci-Fi or wherever, but it's always playing during Halloween. So it's like Christmas. They'll show Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, and all the old the classics. And I think it's really cool that they throw the Frighteners in that classic, time of year mode. Frighteners is officially one of those films. And I think that's incredible.
It certainly is. And only if they would have realized that to begin with and just had it released in October.
if they released it on Halloween night, which actually fell on a Friday, I believe, it fell on a Halloween weekend, I think it would have been a different story.
Absolutely.
Who knows? Yeah. But again, you can also flip the coin, as we know in this day and age. A movie could come out. Look at all the movies that come out and do well, and that are instantly forgot about 2 weeks later.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's that's the flip side. You can say, well, such and such movie had a great opening, and then there's thousands of them. So the fact that the Frighteners far exceeded its goal, and it became a classic film, or a cult classic, or however you want to categorize it. I refer to it as just a classic at this point. I think in a few more years, it'll probably play on Turner Classic Movies. I really do. I think when Turner Classics, and which I'm starting to see now, because that's my favorite. I'm like you guys. I'm a movie fanatic, and I love watching Turner Classics. And they're getting into the 70s kind of B movies with the horror films, the old Christopher Lee Draculas from the early 70s, and I just think it's a matter of time before you'll see the Frighteners on something like that, and really sets a milestone for Peter Jackson.
Absolutely.
So, you know, in the movie, Ray is really, really protective of his lawn and his garden gnomes. What's the state of your lawn?
Well, we live in L.A. We can't use sprinklers here. Otherwise, if I do, I'll get fined $300. So. Everything here is just brown, and I actually live in a condo now, so I don't have that issue of having to worry about a lawn right now.
Outstanding. I just have one last question for you, because you're ticking down the list. You know, there was a story a couple years back that one of Elvis's former agents released that he had a one-night stand with Marilyn Monroe. So you've got Elvis, you've got Joe DiMaggio. How's your JFK?
I refuse to answer that question, Eric.
I think we're gonna get you. I think we're gonna get it for you. I think that's it. We're pitching a JFK for you.
I'm actually doing Howard Stern's version. You ever hear Howard Stern? Yes. When he does Ted Kennedy, and you notice every time he does Ted Kennedy, it's always through a megaphone.
We're gonna have to send you a megaphone. That's it. You gotta practice your Kennedy impersonation.
Oh, that's hilarious, guys.
This has been so awesome, Peter. We really appreciate the time. It's been so much fun talking about the Frighteners with you.
My pleasure, man. And thank you guys for the fun few moments we just had. I appreciate it, man.